skeleton. You're saying she's... No. I don't believe that.
Salve, friend. Oh, sounds serious. I'm listening. Alright, let me see. Stop Fabia going in, but send the new arrival to the empty shrine. Understood. I'll go, but once I'm done, I'll need you to tell me how you know all of this.
Lifts his triple head and lets out his threefold braying.
Livia, would you stop muttering like Medea over a cauldron? You'll scare away my customers.
They follow their trades, imitating their previous lives, but they are ignorant.
This again.
Citizen. Ah, you again. No idea what you're talking about? Look, I haven't been at my best lately. I know that. It's the rheumatism. It starts with constant pain in all your joints. Then the pain starts to mess with your head. Makes you angry, mean. I know that's not an excuse for how I acted. But it's the truth. But with the willow bark, I'm already starting to feel like myself again. And I know I said I owe you one. So I'll leave him alone from now on. It's not as if I was ever going to hurt him anyway. I was just lashing out. I'm going to go and clean up the graffiti. Just forget this ever happened. Will you?
Ah, a new face. Salve. and welcome to... What demon or spirit told you about that? You went snooping in his place? That was risky. We're lucky you didn't cross any lines. Have you spoken to him about it? Really? How did you manage that? Poor fellow. I've heard that can really mess with a person's head. Well done for figuring that out. Really? That's promising. I'll keep an eye out for him. Nice to talk to you.
Whatever's in that great temple up there on the bluff, I bet it's worth a fortune. Hello there, friend. May I say? Are you well, stranger? Have you been out in the sun too long? You seem a little... confused? Perhaps you should go and see Lucretia in a clinic. Malleolus. Not... Very well.
Shiny. Salve and welcome. Need something? All right. Thanks again for...
A new face.
I'm quite sure it's the work of the... We are... But here, I find... Would you... everyone, and... Some... But I like... I'm pleased. Interesting. Yes, I suppose that... What else? That's true. What else? Yeah, it's... And did you happen to catch her name? I see. And was this stranger by any chance wearing a hood? Because I've seen her before. There's something I think you should see. I think you'd better follow me to the baths. But don't follow too closely. We can't have people thinking we're bathing together. All right, you're here. You were asking how I knew the young woman you met by the river was wearing a hood. Here, look down at the bottom of the baths. It's a little hard to make out in this light. If only we could see. Oh, what a marvelous lamp. But do you see it? Somebody waking up by a river in a forest to find a hooded figure with a coin. It's just as you described it. Only, I think I know who that stranger is. Charon, the ferryman of the dead. Charon, who, in exchange for the right coin, helps the souls of the newly deceased cross the Styx, the river that separates the land of the living from the land of the dead.
When I dragged you out of the river, I thought you were never gonna wake up. I checked your pockets for ID, but all I found was some loose change.
In the land of the dead.
When I dragged you out of the river, I thought you were never gonna wake up. I checked your pockets for ID, but all I found was some loose change. Feels like I've spent my whole life in a dead-end job with an endless commute.
I'm so sorry, my friend. I'm so sorry. I take it you know what this means. I'm afraid so. It's all starting to make sense. All these people whose last memory was running from the fires toward the river. It seems none of them escaped with their lives after all. Perhaps we should be grateful they don't remember their final moments. It also tells us that the Golden Rule is the work of Pluto, the god of the underworld, and why his epithet has always been Father of Riches. I know it's a lot to take in, and you look as if you have questions, so I'll try to answer them if I can. That was my first thought too. In the old stories, the underworld was where the souls of the deceased were taken. But it was also possible for the living to reach it without dying, if they were particularly fearless. So I'm afraid I don't know. Oh, I'm sorry. I keep forgetting you're not from here. If you were Roman, or even Greek, you would know these stories. Each of them is slightly different, whether the storyteller was Plato, Homer, Vergil, or Ovid. But they always involved the souls of the dead meeting a grim ferryman named Charon on the bank of a river. It was said that he'd help the new arrival cross, only if they could pay him with a coin, an obol. That's why it was once our custom to bury our loved ones with a coin in their mouths. Charon's obol, we called it. Of course, an obol was a kind of Greek coin, because we inherited this knowledge from the Greeks. To be fair, the ferryman isn't exactly as the poets described, and he, she, they seem to appear to different people in different guises. You say you saw a young woman with a hood, and I once heard Khabash mention a stranger in a ram headdress named Kurti, and Rufius described meeting a stranger named Kumut Tabal wearing an eagle headdress. But whatever form this stranger took, they were always wearing a hood of some sort, and their name always began with a K sound. I suspect the only way you'll solve this riddle is if your paths cross again. Good question. Let's see. In the stories, Charon would always require a coin as payment for passage across the river, but that never made any sense to me. What does an ancient immortal being need with coins? In our case, it seems Charon didn't take the coins we had. He or she merely checked we had one in our possession. So, maybe there's something special about the coins each of us had on us. That might explain why we wound up here, but so many others did not. No. I mean, I had my suspicions, especially after Livia's ramblings, but I would never have figured it out without your help, I promise you. Now that we know where we are, we have to figure out what to do about it, if we don't want to be cast into gold for eternity. We don't have much to go on, except the old stories. I remember 4 in particular about heroes in the underworld. Hercules, the demigod and son of Jupiter, Orpheus, a Thracian poet, Sisyphus, a king of Ephyra, and Aeneas, a Trojan hero. Hercules was able to leave the underworld because he cowed its god with his strength. Sisyphus and Orpheus both relied on their wits instead. They persuaded the goddess of the underworld, Proserpina, to help them escape. And finally, Aeneas was able to escape with the help of a spirit guide, who led him through a secret gate. So it seems you have 2 options: to confront the god of the underworld head-on, or find a way to escape with the help of Proserpina or some other guide. All Romans try to avoid saying it, and the reason is quite simple. He might hear us. You may refer to him as Pluto, if you wish, but you'll only be calling attention to yourself. Do so at your own peril. It's a reasonable question, but the problem is, this place is fairly well designed to keep us here. There's no way to climb up the shaft. And even if you could build a ladder big enough, just trying it would break the golden rule. We know that, thanks to the writings left behind by those who've tried. Shh! Is everyone so blunt where you're from? Oh! That option would be the boldest, but also the only way to learn the truth about the Golden Rule, and maybe even put an end to it. As I said, Hercules managed to overpower the god of the underworld, but he was a demigod. Forgive my candor, but you are no Hercules. Are you telling me that you can? I won't pretend to understand exactly what that means, but if that's true, then perhaps you stand a chance. So, if you want to confront him, I'll help you as much as I can. Who knows? Perhaps your name will be uttered in the same sentence as Hercules one day. But first, you'd need an audience with you-know-who, and for that, you'll need to enter the great temple overlooking the city. The problem is, the door has been sealed shut for as long as I've lived here, and there doesn't even seem to be a keyhole. I suspect the answer lies in the desecrated obelisk in front of it. I'm not sure if you noticed, but there are 4 plaques missing from its base. It looks as though somebody, or a series of somebodies, forcibly removed them, and in doing so, dishonored and angered our divine keeper. If you could recover and replace all 4 of those missing plaques, I imagine he might be willing to receive an audience again. It's the towering stone monument with 4 sides and a pyramid-shaped head that stands before the great temple, a dedication to the god of this place. You'll find them all over Rome, but of course they were looted from Egypt many years ago. It seems one of them made its way here too, although how is a mystery. However, this one is unusual in that each of the 4 sides is decorated in a different style: Roman, Greek, Egyptian, and another I don't recognize. That means you'll need to recover 4 different plaques: Roman, Greek, Egyptian, and a 4th, a mystery plaque. I don't know. But perhaps you should begin your search with the local Greek fellow, Georgius. His store is in the forum. Perhaps Khabash, our Egyptian resident, would be able to tell us. Unfortunately, he disappeared weeks ago. But I did hear Aurelia is peddling rumors about him at the tavern, so perhaps you could talk to her, or just take a look in his room. I'm afraid you're on your own with that one, but perhaps finding the other 3 will illuminate the way. As I mentioned, both Orpheus and Sisyphus were said to have persuaded Proserpina to help them escape, and Aeneas was guided to the exit. The problem is, those are the stories of a poet, a self-aggrandizing king, and a brawler about their own heroic deeds, so they should be taken with a grain of salt. First, Proserpina. What we do know about her is, well, it's a grim tale. It's said the god of the underworld abducted and dragged her here against her will, forcing her into marriage. If the stories are true, then I suppose so. The problem is, How do we communicate with her without being noticed by her captor? Leaving that aside for a moment, there is also the possibility of a spirit guide. I don't suppose you've come across one of those in your travels? Truly? And you're only bringing this up now? Then again, I suppose you were worried I'd think you were as mad as Livia. Can you tell me more? Is it the same voice? What kinds of thing does it say? Fascinating. Perhaps she's a benevolent spirit. Or perhaps... Perhaps you're hearing the voice of Proserpina herself. If she has indeed been abducted, it would make sense for her to speak in cryptic whispers to avoid detection. Tell me, has she told you anything that might lead you to the way out? That is strange. There are no rivers here. Let me think on that. Right, because the current flows into the city through the aqueduct and into the upper cistern. I vaguely recall wondering what was in there, but the door at the back of the great temple is locked up tight. You might be able to get a key from the magistrate, but if that doesn't work, perhaps you can find another way in. Let me know if you find anything in there. All right. I would suggest not discussing this with anyone. The best we can do for them is to let them remain oblivious for as long as possible. As for Livia, it seems she's been shouldering the weight of this terrible secret all this time. Perhaps it would comfort her to know she's not alone. In any case, time is of the essence, so you'd best begin. May Fortuna guide you. Although you may not need her with Proserpina on your side.
Shalom. I feel like I've looked everywhere. At least everywhere I could get to. There are still two places I've never been able to reach. First, the palace. If Livia managed to get in, then I suppose Scintilla could have too. The only other place she could be is somewhere in the cistern network. I remember hearing that Dooley had been poking around in the upper cistern before he was locked up. So you could ask him about it, I suppose. All right, friend.
Just as the ocean accepts the rivers of all the world, so this place accepts all the souls. But it does not notice the crowds that come. The newly arrived. Just as the ocean accepts the... But it does not... Say it. Speak its name. Then it is true. I was right. I thought I saw it, but when the rest of them could not, I kept thinking I must have gone insane. I had to tell myself it was true over and over again, until I wasn't sure if I was deceiving myself. I must apologize if my words seem cryptic. I'd found comfort in reciting the Metamorphoses by our great poet Ovid. He gives such an uncanny description of this place. I cannot help but wonder if he himself came here. Would you like to hear it? I will do my best to remember the relevant verse. There is a downward path, gloomy with fatal yew trees. It leads through dumb silence to the infernal regions. The sluggish Styx exhales vapor, and by that way, the shadows of the newly dead descend, entombed with full rites, and the ghosts of those, at last, given proper burial. The wide, thorny waste is cold and pallid, and the newly arrived shades are ignorant of the road that leads to the Stygian city, where Black Dis has his cruel palace. As the ocean accepts the rivers of all the world, so this place accepts all the souls, and is never too small for any populace, nor notices the crowds that come. There the bloodless shadows wander without flesh or bone. Some crowd the forum, some the house of the ruler of the depths. Others follow their trades, imitating their previous lives, and still others incur punishment. I hope I have done it justice, and now we share a secret. It's as if you've lifted a great burden from my shoulders. Thank you, friend. I think I should rest. Friend, you have given me hope. May you follow in the footsteps of Hercules and return to the light of day. Friend, you...
Oh, you're here. I'm so glad you decided to visit. I'm Aurelia, and I hope I'm... There's a light in your... Why? Just because I'm a woman? Let's just... Not for a few weeks now. Last time I saw him, he was sitting at a table with Georgius, whispering about some job. I remember because they kept looking over their shoulders as if they didn't want anyone else to know. So, naturally, I hovered. The one word I kept hearing was vanishing, and then, the next day, Khabash just disappeared. Coincidence? I think not. All right, see ya.
Greetings and salutations. Greetings, I'm Georgius. It gladdens... My friend... And in a city full of Romans you are asking me? Because I am Greek. Let me tell you something about Greeks and Romans. My name is Georgius, yes. But the Romans, they do not care. They hear me say Georgius, and they think, ah, he must mean Georgius. Good Roman name. They do this all the time. They see us worshipping Zeus, they copy us, but call him Jupiter. They take Hades and call him Pluto, Persephone, Proserpina. I am flattered that they copy our ideas, but why must they change the names? Do they want credit for making it all up? Do they want to forget where it came from? At first, I pull my hair out. After a while, I give up, and I become Georgius the Roman. I accept the world is Roman now. Plus, I have no hair left to pull. But my point is this. If you want to know who stole an old Greek name, look no further than the sticky-fingered Romans. The plague you seek was pilfered from a collection of old Greek relics by none other than Dully. He cannot help it. Like a typical Roman, he likes shiny things, especially those that once belonged to my people. And besides, it makes him happy. So I say, let him keep it. I believe he still has it with him, in his cell, just opposite the Temple of Demeter. Ah, I knew this day would come. I do not wish to lie to you, my friend, but even discussing this matter is dangerous. Please, let us leave the live coals safely beneath the ash. Very well, but the magistrate would not look kindly upon this, so please keep it to yourself. For several months now, I have been sneaking out at night to worship the gods of my ancestors in the temple of Demeter. Each day, I leave offerings of food in the hope that we may have a bountiful harvest, and yet the next day when I return, the food is missing. So I ask, who or what is devouring the food in this temple? Stranger still. Once I sat in front of my shop like the 100-eyed Argus until dawn to see if I could spot a thief going in. But do you know what I saw? Nothing! Nobody entered, and yet when I went to take a look, my offering was gone. It is bizarre, is it not? When I told my friend Khabash of this at the tavern, he offered to help investigate. He went in, and to my dismay, he was never seen again. It is the only Greek temple in the city. Head towards the baths, and it is the last building on your right. I do not think you should pursue this, my friend. It would break my heart to be responsible for 2 people disappearing. But you do not strike me as a kind of person to be deterred by such warnings, so just be careful, I beg you.
Salve again, friend. I went and did as you asked, and it worked. How is it possible that you've just arrived here and you already know everyone and exactly what's about to happen to them? Oh, come on. I just did as you asked. The least you can do is level with me. I'll keep it between us. I promise. You're toying with me, right? Wait, you're not kidding, are you? That's the only way you could have known. You're a bit like... Oh, what was his name? Sisyphus. Yeah, that's the one. Old King Sisyphus. Sisyphus was a Greek king a long time ago. For daring to think he could outsmart the gods, he was given a terrible punishment. He was forced to push a great boulder up to the top of a hill. Only, just as it reached the top, it would roll all the way back down to the bottom, forcing him to start over and over and over again, for all eternity. Just like you. Actually, now that I think about it, there are a bunch of old stories about the gods punishing people by making them do the same futile task over and over. Tantalus was made to grasp at fruit on a tree he could never quite reach. The Pleiades had to keep fetching water in a sieve. Oh, and Ixion was strapped to a wheel going round and round forever. But on the bright side, at least you're not stuck in the underworld like they all were. Anyway, I don't know which god you managed to upset to get yourself into this position, friend, but you seem all right to me. So, I'll tell you what. I'll keep doing whatever I can to help you, and you just focus on finding a way to break the cycle you're in. Oh, that's kind of you to say. Now, I'm going to keep your secret. Although, it's not as if I'll remember this next time we talk anyway, right? Oh, and if our conversations ever start to annoy you, just tell me you're busy. I know when I'm not wanted. May fortune smile on you, friend.
Citizen, we're finally alone. I assume you already know. We have? I must... Is that about right? Look, it's now. I assume... I think it's best if I hang on to it. You mean to ask
why am I unwilling to trust a newly arrived non-citizen with access to our water supply, the lifeblood of this city?
I'm sorry, but that is simply out of the question.
You mean Duilius? Perhaps? Thank you.
Ah, a visitor. Welcome, welcome. May I ask your name? It's a sincere pleasure to meet you. Tell me, what brings you all the way down here? Ah, Khabash. I know this man. He came through here some weeks ago. I will tell you everything I know, but first, a request. I have been living down here alone for many years, with nobody to talk to but myself. The one thing I long for above all else before I die is a good philosophical argument with somebody astute. I'm hoping that person is you. Let us find out with this simple question. Have you deduced the name of the god responsible for the Golden Rule? Excellent. I see you are indeed quite astute. Very few come to that realization before their time in the sun is over. Now, will you join me in a friendly Socratic dialogue? Wonderful. Then let me begin with a question. Would you say you know the difference between right and wrong? You are an overthinker too. We're the same then. It is probably why I became a philosopher. But if you struggle with right and wrong normally, then down here with the Golden Rule, surely your struggle can only have become more difficult. Well, that's reassuring. And the truth is, you're not alone. You see, out there in the world, being uncertain about right and wrong was acceptable because our mistakes rarely had consequences. So we would tell lies and bend rules and turn a blind eye and rationalize, and yet still find a way to think of ourselves as good people. But under the Golden Rule, morality matters. The slightest wrongdoing could result in a mass execution. So to navigate this maze, we would have to be certain about the difference between right and wrong. Wouldn't you agree? That is an excellent question, and it leads directly to my next line of inquiry. So let me ask you this. Is there one system of morality which is always perfectly correct, which you could follow in every situation and always do the right thing? How can that be? Since they all have differences, it follows that in some cases they would offer different conclusions about what is right and wrong. If there is a correct moral code, then wouldn't it follow that only one can be the correct one? You know, I think you'd find an ally in Herodotus, a scribe from among my people who lived some 400 years ago. He told the story of a man named Darius, whose curiosity was piqued when he learned that a certain tribe had the practice of eating their dead. He asked some Greeks who burnt their dead, "What would it take for you to eat your dead?" Aghast, they replied, "Nothing." Then he asked the tribe who ate their dead, "What would it take for you to burn your dead?" "Nothing," they replied, equally aghast. From this, Herodotus concluded that custom is king, that right and wrong are merely local ideas which do not survive the journey from one tribe to another. I take it you're in agreement? Then let me ask you this. If you visited a tribe where they ate each other, copulated with the dead, and drank wine from cups made out of human skulls, would you still maintain that within such a tribe there is nothing wrong with such conduct? And that's a credit to you. It is the mark of a civilized person to change their position when presented with a superior argument. My point is this. I don't think anyone alive truly knows any hard and fast rules about right and wrong. If there is one thing I have observed about rules, it is that virtuous people do not need them, and evil people will always find a way around them. And so we must accept our limitations, and the sad truth that no human society will ever achieve the utopia for which it strives. In mathematics, we would call it an asymptote, a line that can be approached but never reached. Because the only way to create a utopia is with the ever-present threat of force, such as the Golden Rule. This and no other is the root from which a tyrant springs when he first appears as a protector. And life under tyranny is no utopia at all. Well, reasonable minds may differ, and if utopia really is possible, then I would be glad to be wrong. In any case, thank you for humoring an old man. I would be happy to answer your questions. You mean, how did I end up living alone in this cave with nothing but these relics of the past for company? It's a long story. I was a quarrelsome young man. At 19, I left Corinth for Rome to study rhetoric at one of her finest academies, so I could argue more forcefully. Back then, I used to enjoy verbally sparring with everyone I could, and I was good. One night, I found myself in a tavern in an argument with a drunk mercenary. It became heated, he drew a gladius, and I won the argument, but lost my life. I woke up on the banks of the Styx at a campfire opposite Karen. Of course, I tried to persuade her to let me return, but even with all my skill, I failed. I settled in, made friends, and learned what I could, quickly realizing our little community faced certain death under the Golden Rule. So I began looking for a place to hide underground. Fortunately, I found this place waiting for me. You see, I was not the first to take refuge here. I returned to my friends above, persuaded them to join me, and 12 of us descended for the last time to live out our days hidden from Hades' tyranny. They are one and the same. The Romans call him Pluto, but long before that, my people called him Hades. My generation was wiped out, turned to gold, many years ago. My friends and I were able to avoid the same fate by hiding down here. I think it's safest to assume that if I was to return, Hades would realize that his furies hadn't finished the job, and he'd send them after me again. I fear that if you were to utter my name in the city, even by mistake, that Hades would hear you and know I am still alive. I'm afraid I am the only one left. There were 12 of us in the beginning, but one by one, my friends passed away. Some from malnutrition, others from madness and despair. It has been lonely. Before my unexpected visit from Khabash some weeks ago, I'd not seen another person in many, many years. Living in darkness is not without its challenges. The first challenge is diet. Fortunately, I found that eating fresh fish provides most of the nutrients I need. And sometimes, when there are Greek people living up above, I surface at night and salvage the offerings they've left in the temple of Demeter. The greater challenge is the isolation, so I like to imagine arguments where I argue both sides. But, like so many things in life, arguments are better with a partner. As you wish. Did we not discuss it at length already? Oh, I see. You're toying with me. Ha! I will tell you, but you may find him hostile. To prepare for your encounter, there are certain things you must know. Very few know this, but before the Romans came to this city, it was once entirely Greek. The architecture, the temples, and the people. When the Romans came, in typical fashion, they claimed it as their own, built over everything that could be built over, and renamed the things that could not. Thus, the shrine of Persephone became the shrine of Proserpine. And when they found an obelisk bearing the name Hades, they tore it off and replaced it with Pluto instead. And the city's dwindling Greek residents, witnessing this compulsive Roman conquest, decided to preserve what they could of their heritage. They gathered their art and valuables, secreted them away through the temple of Demeter, and hid them here, out of reach of the Romans. I'm getting to that. You see, it was among these old Greek relics that I found the thing you seek. An even older plaque bearing an Egyptian inscription. We had no idea until years later, when the first of my friends began to die. As a result of their deaths, we began to dig catacombs branching off from this cavern, to lay them to rest. We extended the tunnel so far that we accidentally discovered another, an even older tunnel, which somebody had gone to great lengths to keep hidden. Suddenly it made sense why there was an out-of-place Egyptian plaque among our people's possessions. You see, we proud Greeks had thought the Romans beasts for stealing and corrupting our heritage. But it turns out this game has been going on much longer than any of us imagined. I think it is best you head through the catacombs and follow Khabash's trail. There are certain things you must see for yourself. Take this key. You'll need it to open the gate. If I did, would I be living like this? I enjoyed our chat, but please, keep my presence here a secret, yes?